Hey folks, welcome to the Hot Zone. I've got my giant TV back, as you can tell. It's been a while, a couple of years actually, since this giant TV I bought worked, and that's because this happened. It's absolutely amazing with so many people. Holy crap! Yeah, so finding parts in Panama is not really a thing, and so aside from just replacing the TV, it took a while to finally get the right part from the States and get it down here, and it actually works. I'm really excited, even though I don't quite have the lights figured out just right yet, but we'll get that working. I want to talk about the one thing that I'm getting the most questions about right now. Everybody that I talk to says, Chuck, what do you think is going to happen in Ukraine? Ukraine, right there. Let's talk a little bit about Ukraine and about what might happen. If you've been watching the news, you know that Russia has been building up troops along the border with Ukraine of over 100,000 troops now. That's bad. There's been a lot of saber rattling going on. That's bad. Russia has sort of a history here. A long history, as a matter of fact, in Ukraine. I saw one guy today that was talking about how Russia actually started in Ukraine. The original Russian people came from the area around Kiev. And so Russia and Ukraine are tightly interwoven in their history. And of course, Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union, big part of it. They had a lot of the Soviet Union's nuclear armaments stationed there. There are a lot of Russian people that live in Ukraine and vice versa. So there's a very tight bond, at least in the eyes of Vladimir Putin, when it comes to Ukraine. And so that's a little bit of the history of maybe why Putin wants Ukraine so badly. The real question is, why now? And I think that's pretty easy to understand. If you look at the weak sauce coming out of the State Department and the White House in the United States, I think that if Putin, being a strategy master, is looking at America right now and saying, if I was ever going to take Ukraine, this would be the time to do it, because this would be the time it'd be least likely to get significant pushback from the United States. Now, the United States is saying some things. They've put 8,000 troops on notice to get ready to go over there. They haven't actually gone yet. We've been sending lethal aid to Ukraine. And so obviously the United States does not want Ukraine to go over to the Russians. And that's really what this comes down to, is it's a love triangle between Russia, the United States, and Ukraine. And every time Ukraine starts to lean toward the West, and maybe think about joining NATO or something like that, Russia says, don't want that to happen. Not going to happen. Even though Ukraine's a sovereign state, they should be able to do what they want. Russia is not going to put up with that. So if you go back to 2014 and you look at the Maidan Square massacre during what they called the Dignity Uprising, or the Maidan Square Revolution, that entire, I mean, it was violent. It was bad. I was there. We went just as the Maidan Square protests were ending, and we walked down there and filmed the war going on. And by the time we got there, it was kind of a stalemate, but I'll find that footage and show it to you here, and maybe in another episode. But the bottom line is, the reason that it happened was because the Russians, and specifically Vladimir Putin, did not want the Ukrainians to go over to the West and create agreements with Europe. They didn't, at that time, a lot of people in Ukraine were leaning towards voting to become a member of the EU, and the Ukrainian president did not go along with that, because the Ukrainian president was a puppet of Russia and knew that it would go very badly for Ukraine if Ukraine threw in with the Europeans. And so this uprising that happened in November 2013 to February 2014 essentially ended up overthrowing the Ukrainian government. The Ukrainian government stepped down and a new government was elected, and in that, what they call the Maidan Revolution or the Dignity Revolution. That did not make Russia happy, and so not long after that, Russia annexed areas of Crimea, which is down in the southern part of Ukraine, where there are a lot of Russians living, a lot of Russian people of Russian descent living. Short-lived conflict was violent, a lot of people died, and it's been sort of a stalemate since then. So from 2014 to now, it's been a stalemate. Every time Russia has made overtures toward the Ukraine has rebuffed those overtures and has steadily moved to the West in their politics. And so this is, Vladimir Putin does not want to let that happen. Vladimir Putin desperately wants to rebuild the Soviet Union glory days, and he sees this as his big chance to do it. He's been consolidating power for years. He's finally got the power to almost unilaterally make a decision like this. And he knows that the United States is as weak as it's been in decades. And so he sees this as his time to move. Now, the real question is, will he move? Will he invade? As it stands right now, I think the chances are higher that he invades than they have been in a long, long time, but I still don't think he will. And the reason for that is because it would still be very costly for him to do it. Now, I've heard some talk about whether or not there's propaganda coming out of Russia trying to prepare the Russian people for losses like that it would take if they actually did go to war. And there has been some of that recently. Still going to be expensive for Russia if they try to do it in a lot of ways. The answers coming out, or the reactions coming out of the State Department, are sort of feckless. Take a look at what I mean by that.
I think, as you've heard our Secretary of State and our National Security Advisor and others convey, we don't know if the Russians are playing games on diplomacy. We hope not. And our intention, we are certainly pursuing diplomacy with a level of seriousness.
Yeah, so if that's the best that they can do out of the White House, Ukrainians better brush up on their Russian. So I think that for now, because of the response of the West in general, and because of the threat of not just sanctions, but actual military conflict that would result in lots and lots of loss of life, both in Russia and in Ukraine, I think that it's, I guess the way to put it is this: whether or not Russia invades Ukraine in the next couple of months will be the measure of how Russia views the weakness coming out of the United States. If they go ahead and invade, then you'll know just how weak they believe America to be. Now, they may believe America to be weaker than it actually is, but that doesn't matter. If they don't invade, it could have to do with their belief about how weak America's response will be or not. But there are other things to take into account here, too. I'm thinking if they invade, it probably won't be till around February 20th. Now, February 20th or 21st is the 8th anniversary of the day that the Ukrainian government fell, and they got the new, more pro-Western government. And so that's a momentous day. Not only that, but that also signals the end of the Winter Olympics in China. And I think another reason why Putin has not attacked already is because he doesn't want to upstage his friend President Xi of China in the Winter Olympics. So those are the kinds of things that geopolitics takes into account. And I may very well end up going to Ukraine. I really hope not. It's very cold over there right now. And I'd really rather not see that area explode in violence, but it's very possible that I may end up going in the short term to do some reporting from over there. If I do, I will bring you along with me, like always. So thanks for watching The Hot Zone. You can subscribe to The Hot Zone and you can support The Hot Zone. That'd be a really good idea by going to Patreon.com/hotzone, although I really would prefer you go to chuckholton.locals.com, chuckholton.locals.com, and subscribe and support the podcast over there. I am not posting anything anymore on Patreon. We still have a few subscribers over there, but if you want to see the extra content that I put up, a lot of the stuff that is the raw material that decides where I'm going to go next. I'm putting that stuff up on locals.com. So go check it out. Follow us there. Like and share this podcast on YouTube and everywhere else you find it. Thanks for watching. I'm Chuck Holton.